Now, looking at a story that shocked, and it's fair to say disgusted a lot of people here in France. The frontman of the band Eagles of Death Metal, the band that was playing at the Bataclan the night of the Paris attacks, has an extremely controversial theory about what happened that fateful night in November.
Yes, the comments have come from Jesse Hughes, the singer with the band Eagles of Death Metal. He's given an interview to Fox Business, a lengthy interview that was broadcast in two parts yesterday and today, but it's one excerpt in particular that seems to have gathered all of the attention across the world, really. Now, what he says is that those terror attacks in which 90 people were killed, he thinks the venue's security staff were in on it. Take a listen to his explanation as to why he thinks that.
I walked past the dude who was supposed to be the security guard for the backstage. He didn't even look at me. I immediately went to the promoter and I said, "Who's that guy? I want to put another dude on." And he goes, "Well, some of the other guards aren't here yet." And eventually I found out that 6 or so wouldn't show up at all.
Why is that?
You know, out of respect for the police still investigating it, I won't make a definite statement, but I'll say it seems rather obvious that they had a reason not to show up.
So it seems his theory is based on a snub in the corridor, basically. We don't know where he got his information from that 6 or 7 people didn't bother to turn up that night. As he points out, the investigation continues. However, he was quite happy to make his own conclusions and slander everyone who worked in security at the Bataclan. Understandably, there have been many angry reactions to this. Taking a look at some of the people on Twitter saying things like, Jesse Hughes has confirmed that he really is an idiot, sadly. This person calls him a dangerous conspiracy theorist. Now, possibly the kindest comments I've seen about him today have come from Stereo Gum on their website. What they say is that it can't be easy to get your head around the idea that so many of the people who came to see your band were killed for it, and Jesse Hughes appears to be publicly wrestling with the aftermath. But if we take a look at Le Figaro, what they point out is this is the first time that he has ever mentioned any kind of problem, any kind of complaint or issue with security that night. And they feel, basically, they wonder, where has this come from? Why is he saying it now?
He could be coping with the trauma. He could just be stupid, as one of the tweets pointed out. Only he will be able to tell us that, I suppose. Tell us more about the security staff who were working that night, because I think it emerged very quickly that 1 or 2 of them, if not all of them, behaved heroically.
Yes, and this is what really has fueled anger here in France, because as Paris Match reports, 2 of the security guards were known to have really behaved in a manner that is quite spectacular. People who aren't paid a huge amount of money doing amazing things. Basically, they are credited with saving possibly hundreds of lives that night. One of the security guards, a man called Didi, who didn't want his surname to be known for fear that he might then become a subject of attacks himself, he ran inside after the first shots were fired, ran to the emergency exits to enable people to get out, because he knew that these people were trapped, basically, with armed gunmen. More than 100,000 people have actually signed a petition calling for Didi to be given the Légion d'honneur. And one of the other heroes of that night, forgotten heroes now, really, it has to be said, largely speaking, Numake Sidibe physically lifted people up through a hole in the ceiling, or through a kind of trapdoor, to enable them to get up onto the roof and away from the gunmen. He physically did that himself, lifted them up, got them out of the building and saved their lives. Now, he's been honoured by his own town of Choisy. He was given a medal. But you may remember, if we think back to the Tallis attacks, where we had the American soldiers, off-duty American soldiers, who happened to foil a planned terror attack on a Tallis train from Amsterdam to Paris, they were immediately given the Légion d'honneur. And a lot of people are asking why the same thing didn't happen. If you look back on social media in the immediate aftermath of the attacks, you see lots of messages like this one. This is a picture of Numake Sidibe, and what they say here is that he and his team saved hundreds of lives. Bravo and thank you.
It does make you wonder why an award hasn't been given. And I think maybe people can read into that what they like. Tell us more about Jesse Hughes then, because clearly he came up with some statements at the time about, you know, a kid hiding under his leather jacket to escape and wonders how big the kid was to hide under one small leather jacket. Some of the things he said don't really add up. I mean, you were working that night, Marcus, you were too. We all worked that night. We all heard lots of things. Tell us more about Jesse Hughes.
There have been some comments he's made that do very much sound like they're off the cuff. I'm not going to say that he's made them up, but certainly that there is a hint of that in them. If we take a look at his Twitter account, you see from his profile photograph, he's actually chosen to use a photograph of himself carrying his guitar as though it's a machine gun, which, given what happened at one of their concerts, does seem tasteless, to say the least. It's not the first time that he has said things that have upset people. Back in February, he said that gun control failed Paris. Did your French gun control stop a single person from dying at the Bataclan? If anyone can answer yes, I'd like to hear it. His theory being that if people had been armed, they would have been able to take on these terrorists themselves and there would have been less bloodshed. It seems highly unlikely. The Daily Beast wrote a large article on him just after the attacks where he's described as a gun-toting supporter of Donald Trump, basically many contradictory things about him, quite a strange character. And one Twitter user, Guillaume P, sums him up perfectly. He's profoundly stupid. Trump, guns, and now this.
Well, there is freedom of speech. Jesse Hughes is allowed to have his say, but obviously everyone is allowed to have their say back. Emma James with Media Watch, thank you very much indeed.